Hi everyone! For this Random Talk Sunday, I am going to be briefly discussing the topic of sports and what I think of sports in general. However, before I do that, I just wanted to mention that unfortunately I wasn't able to get a hold of the request that somebody had in regards to a film. This film was called Clifford, and unfortunately I was not able to get a hold of it at this time. However, if I do manage to ultimately get a hold of it, I will definitely review it and discuss it. And since I don't think it particularly holds a certain category, I will make sure to put it in this Random Talk video Sunday. So without further ado, though, let me discuss what I think of sports. I usually think of sports as being very overrated for what they are. I think there is a huge emphasis, in particular the United States, when it comes to sports, especially the sports brands, in particular Nike, Adidas, Reebok, Under Armour, all of those companies. There seems to be a huge emphasis on sports, and I understand that that's a good thing because, again, we want to have people be involved in these kinds of extracurricular activities that allow them to be active and stay in shape. That's totally cool, and that's completely a legitimate reason to enjoy sports. However, I think sometimes they get way too overblown for what they ultimately offer, as in regards to entertainment value. I think sports are just kind of come and go. You know, you have one star athlete at 1 minute. It's kind of like any other kind of form of entertainment. You know, you have one who stands in the spotlight, or a couple that stand in the spotlight within a particular sport, and then they fade away and they retire with their however millions they get from doing their sport and or sports. And to me, I feel like a lot of the commentary on sports is completely unnecessary, especially when all of these statistics end up changing over the years. I always find that a lot of what sports commentators say is really the obvious. I think also the reason why sports don't appeal to me, I guess, as much is because it's just the fact that they go, in particular, so long. I usually get sort of drained from the whole experience watching sports, especially if it's not a good game. Like if there's no close proximity to the scores in regards to who's playing who, then it becomes just very draining, and then I just want to just change to something else, like mid-game, because they're just so long. Football is really long. American football is very long, especially when you go into overtime. Soccer is also fairly long, but I still think that soccer is still interesting in how you have to really fight for that point the entire game, for that entire goal. And I guess my interest in soccer has kind of been partially due to the FIFA World Cup. For some reason, I like the whole idea of national sports and of nations competing against each other. That's why I think the Olympics in particular appeals to me. But when it comes to more of the American sports like baseball, American football, basketball, those kinds of sports I think just don't hold a lot of interest for me. Would I enjoy seeing a game live? Yeah, sure, no problem. But to devote my entire attention to one particular sport and to get invested in one particular sport, I think would be saying too much for me. I know that there's a lot of people who appeal to a certain team, and there's a large fan base, at least within the United States, when it comes to certain teams and players and such. And to be honest, I really don't hold this kind of loyalty. I just almost feel like it's kind of unnecessary to focus in on just one aspect and one team when it comes to any kind of sports, because there's always going to be good and bad things when it comes to a team, because again, we are flawed as human beings, and I'm not saying flawed in necessarily a bad way, but in a way to which, sometimes we don't do as well as that we would maybe expect at certain times. Sometimes the Lakers lose. Sometimes the Dodgers don't win. Sometimes there's just times where the team's not at their best, and that's just kind of how sports works. And I guess the whole overly competitive nature that I think that sports brings to me just kind of gets a little it not only gets a little uninteresting, it doesn't provide me with a whole lot of insight or really entertainment. I just feel like when I'm watching a game on the television and I'm not really invested as to who wins, then I think that's just really a big shut-off for me, at least. If you don't get someone that I really want to win or that I really want to lose, there's really no point. And I usually don't like taking these sides, though. So, I mean, unless it's more of a national thing, like with the U.S., I always like cheering for the United States. But when it comes to like these like national kinds of sports that the U.S. is really famous for, I could really honestly care less. But I mean, I think it's just all dependent on what people find to be interesting, and I think sometimes sports can be engaging for people at times, and then at other times they'll develop new interests and new sports to play or to watch. I guess that's how sports has always been for me. I've never been completely devoted to it. It doesn't really take up much of my time. It's not something that I really think about all that often. It's not something that really engages me or gets me on the edge of my seat, unless again it's more of a national thing. If the United States is going against somebody, or if it's Switzerland going against somebody, then that's something that I kind of get pumped for and get excited about. Unless I have a feeling that team's going to lose, and fortunately for FIFA, that was really the case. So I just think that these things really do come and go in popularity, and I just think it really just all depends. And there's always a winner and there's always a loser, and yeah, it's just sports. And I think too, though, our university campuses in particular, I think, emphasize sports so heavily, and I think that really dampers the ability to reinforce education, because really school is not about trying to be the best athlete, unless you are trying to shoot for that as your career. Ultimately, the majority of us who are not going to be in a major league are really not going to be wholly devoted to sports unless they maybe get within the sports industry, which is again something that I think has been very popular, at least at my school, is the whole idea of sports management and being involved in sports, maybe within the business end. But as far as sports goes in regards to the impact that it has on a particular university, I really think that it is really overemphasized, our sports, and not really, and there doesn't seem to be a huge emphasis on really trying to educate the college kids. At least that's how I feel at my school. I feel like, or at least my university where I went, I felt like that a lot of time people were devoted to sports and not to studying or really getting the groundwork running. It was more of a time to, yeah, socialize and have fun because we're playing sports and I'm part of a team. And, you know, that whole social dynamic, I think, really helps a lot of people, but I don't think it ultimately helps them in the long run when it comes to getting an education, getting a job. And I just think that it should be something that is more something that's geared to being on the side of universities, and if somebody really wants to go pro in whatever sport, that they would have the ability to access that. But but the majority of us who again are not going to be able to be pro athletes, I think that there should be more of an emphasis for the majority of people, because ultimately it's not something that really stays with you for the rest of your life, a sport. So to be honest, I think that sports do offer a lot of good things. Again, they offer exercise, they offer teamwork, they offer a lot of different things. Well, teamwork depending on what sport you play. They offer a sense of competition and understanding, you know, that there is always going to be a loser, there's always going to be a winner. It's okay to lose, it's okay to win. You know, just introducing people to this whole dynamic, I think, is very important. But I think it's so overly emphasized within our culture, I think within American culture in particular, that I don't think that it allows for other things that are also very important to be a part of our lives. In particular, education. In particular, focusing on work, on trying to, you know, grow a career. I feel like that sports really dampers this, because a lot of the times there is a huge amount of scheduling when it comes to sports, and pretty much when you're at a university, pretty much the bulk of the entirety of your schooling will be devoted to this sport. I looked into this on my university campus, and the scheduling is ridiculous. You wouldn't have time for anything, and I think this really overemphasis doesn't allow for a lot of balance. And I understand the demand of sports, and I understand that sports hold a really cultural significance, in particular to the United States. But I think there is too much emphasis on it, and I think that there should be room for more opportunities for people that involve other things besides sports. And I just know, though, that the chances of people being able to ultimately make a career out of sports, on being an actual pro athlete, are very slim. And yeah, you can be within sports management, and you can do all these other things that are involved with sports in particular. But I think that there is too much of an emphasis on it within our culture, and it doesn't allow for us to focus on other things that I think are really important for us to focus on, like technology, on certain aspects of science, and I think it just limits people's opportunities, because if your whole idea is devoted into that sport, it makes it difficult to ultimately reach out and see if you can do other things within your life. So I just feel like it's just, like, again, I just think that it's nothing is wrong with sports. I just think the overemphasis within it, overemphasis of it in our culture, I think ultimately just makes it a lot more difficult for education and other things to be emphasized for our young adult youth out there. But ultimately, I think that's really all I can say in regards to sports. I did play sports when I was younger. I did play soccer first, then I played volleyball, which I consider to be my favorite sport, volleyball. I enjoy mini golf now and again. I enjoy badminton too, even though you probably could say that mini golf and badminton are not necessarily sports. I still enjoy them as sort of recreational activities, you know, the things that I do within my spare time. And I find that a lot more enjoyable had I would do that as a and doing that as a way of seeing sports as opposed to seeing it as a professional career. I think it's just made my life a whole lot easier just to devote to sports on the side, if anything, just to get some exercise. And I think it just allowed me to work on things that I'm interested in more, and I'm really glad I did not take a sport in college. It would have just been way too much. But yeah, I think those are ultimately things that I think that really contribute to people's time and commitment. It just depends on how much time and commitment you're willing to give, and if ultimately what you're giving is really worth your time. And I honestly feel that sports, I think, is something that's more recreational, at least for me, and not something that I would ever consider as a career or being a part of. I think they're enjoyable at times, but I think they're just way too emphasized within our culture, and don't allow for us to explore other kinds of recreational activities and like hiking and things of that nature. Or doing things that involve education and gaining work experience to improve the brain function. Those I don't think are overly emphasized, and I think it would be good if we did that. But I think, though, that's really all I can say in regards to sports. If there are any questions, comments, concerns, I'd be more than happy to answer them. But I think that's really all I can say. I hope you all have a great day, week, month, and year. And I hope to see you all in the next video. Thank you so much for watching.